When you hear the name H.P. Lovecraft, what is the first thing you think of? Some might say his original works like the iconic Call of Cthulhu. Others might point to media he's influenced like the incredible 2018 movie Annihilation. If you ask me personally, I'd begin gushing over From Software's Bloodborne. Of course, if you're a Yu-Gi-Oh player or are familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh like I am, your true answer might actually be the archetype at the center of today's video, Entity. First making their debut in the 2013 Korean edition of the main set Legacy of the Valiant, the entities were once gods. And I quite literally mean it. Before the TCG localized its name, the archetype was simply known as God across seas. A shame this was changed, but I do personally enjoy the unsettling imagery when saying entity aloud.
That is not a fucking person!
Each and every card in this archetype is actually based off of a specific character or item within Lovecraft stories or inspired spin-offs. What's fascinating about these associations is how accurately they reflect their foundations. Thus, in an attempt to bring this information to light, like many of Lovecraft's protagonists minus the part where most of them go insane, let's dig deeper into the lore of Yu-Gi-Oh's most horrific archetype. Just a fair warning, if I do butcher any of these names, you can roast the out of me in the comments below. Anyhow, there are two old entities in Yu-Gi-Oh!, both of which are synchro monsters, Old Entity Cthugha and Old Entity Hastur. Cthugha is based on, would you guess it, Cthugha, a great old one in the Cthulhu mythos. Created by August Derleth, a controversial publisher of Lovecraft, Cthugha in lore is described as a great being hovering above the trees like living fire. Now, when you first hear this, you might think it's some all-powerful demon about to purge you of all your sins. And then you see it's just a ball of fire? It's actually kind of cute. Regardless, in Derleth's The Dweller in Darkness, the protagonist of the story, trying to ward away the outer god Nyarlathotep, wink wink, summon it. Outside of this major cameo, the name Cthugha is whispered throughout future stories, but the old god does not physically appear again. The art of Yu-Gi-Oh's Cthugha partially matches Derleth's depiction of Cthugha. Both very clearly appear to be raw creatures of fire, though the synchro monster leans a bit more heavily into the eldritch horror-esque elements, as opposed to the original kind of being just a chewed-up tennis ball. The fact Yu-Gi-Oh's Cthugha combines any rank 4 XYZ on summon is a direct callback to its Lovecraftian counterpart in the aforementioned The Dweller in Darkness. In other words, as Outer Entity Nyarla is the only rank 4 XYZ in the entity archetype, Old Entity Cthugha can banish it as Old God Cthugha did to Nyarlathotep before it could invade Wisconsin. That's not a joke, by the way. I forgot to mention Nyarlathotep for some reason wanted to invade Wisconsin of all places. Hastur, on the other hand, is inspired by Hastur, another great old one in Lovecraftian lore that has a different significance depending on where you pull from. See, Hastur was originally invented by Ambrose Bierce, another horror writer concurrent to Lovecraft's time. This version of the being was a yellow-hooded, benign god, sometimes called the King in Yellow. I mean, as benign as the picture you're seeing here could be called benign. Hastur is likened to a shepherd as seen in the short story it originates from, Hääta the Shepherd. Lovecraft, having adored Bierce's work, adopted it into his own, though only mentions the god by name in his stories. Not too long after, however, August Derleth incorporated Hastur into his own stories and spawned a much more grotesque version of it, dubbed the Feaster from Afar, a tentacled, mind-sucking monstrosity. Hastur, in our very fun and definitely not a combo simulator of a children's card game, manages to encompass both perspectives. The card art details both the yellow-hooded deity of Lovecraft and Bierce centered, and Derleth's creature of nightmares looming in the distance. Hastur's card effect, on the other hand, appears to be exclusively a rendition of the Feaster from Afar. The synchro monster, when it leaves the field, can equip itself to an opponent's monster. After this pseudo-equip spell is destroyed, you can take control of that monster. The Feaster from Afar, in canon, would lash its tentacles to its victims' brains and siphon their energy, something not too far-fetched from what we got as a playable. Far-fetched, get it? It's a pun? The obligatory dumb target of Nadir's servant, Entis, is based on the elder god Entis Kambal. Elder gods, in general, are a group of extraterrestrial entities that typically oppose the outer and old gods. Entis Kambal, in particular, was created by Gary Myers in his book The House of Worm. She's consistently portrayed as a female warrior, wearing long flowing robes, and bearing a sword and shield. And this Kambal will sometimes be credited with having created the Elden Sign, No, not the Elden Ring. Back away, you fiend. A symbol used to protect one from the clutches of the old and outer gods. Even with this lack of substance, Entis is a pretty faithful adaptation of this information. The card art, spot on. And the ability for Entis to pop a card when it's sent to the graveyard mimics that brief excerpt on the Elden sign. Then there's Norden.
Norden's the best card.
Hashtag ban Norden, because Jesus Christ.
Aren't you guys so happy that Norden and Instant Fusion did not get hit on that last ban list?
Yeah, this card has a little bit of history in the game. Norden is famed for facilitating some wacky-ass combos, but in Cthulhu mythos and Celtic mythology, he actually takes on a much more humble role. See, Norden is based off of Nodens, a Celtic god of healing. Though there are no surviving physical depictions of Nodens, many scholars perceive him to be a royal warrior presiding over nature. Lovecraft took this concept to heart and depicted his Nodens as an older bearded figure, rather human-like in nature, riding a seashell pulled by multiple legendary beasts. Its most notable appearance is in the dream quests of unknown Kadath, whereby it helps a human, Randolph Carter, in thwarting Nyarlathotep. You can describe Yugioh's Norden with the same exact words I described Nodens just now. You got the bearded old man, his seashell carriage, and a legendary beast, the hippocampus, as his steed. And I think it's fitting that the fusion monster can summon a level 4 monster from grave. Give me a second to cook. Great Old Ones, Elder Ones, and the Outer Gods, which we will talk about shortly by the way, are always described as these sort of larger-than-life beings unfathomable to humankind. The entity monsters, coincidentally, are all extra deck monsters. The main deck monsters in this exchange can thus be considered as a proxy for humankind. After all, you normally need main deck monsters to summon the extra deck monsters in a similar manner to how humans always seem to accidentally summon Lovecraft's creatures in the author's works. Norden bringing back a level 4 can then be considered akin to Nodens helping Carter in the dream quest of unknown Kadath against Nyarlathotep. Though, with all these constant name drops about Nyarlathotep, let's finally talk about the
sweet! Man-made horrors beyond my comprehension.
Oh boy. Remember that entire format where we were just making this dude over and over, locking your opponents out of their entire turn? Yep, that's your boy Azathoth. The infamous and now fittingly banned Rank 5 XYZ is based off of H.P. Lovecraft's Azathoth, aka Azathoth, but with an H added at the end. Azathoth is one of the big bads in the Lovecraft universe, kinda like my mom was when I was trying to sneak my DS into bed. He is the ruler of the Outer Gods, a being at the center of the universe that slumbers while all others are awake. Yet, should he himself ever wake, it's possible we all might cease to exist thereafter. Azathoth is first mentioned in an unfinished story called Azathoth, though doesn't actually appear in the text funnily enough. After this reference, Azathoth's name is whispered throughout text like Haunter in the dark, but the Outer God still never physically appears. Azathoth in Yugioh, however, I don't need to play those clips from earlier over again. You know how rampant this dude was. The first thing that stands out about our beloved XYZ is its ability to summon itself over any outer entity XYZ. Nyarla is the only one in existence, and given that Azathoth in Lovecraftian's universe is supposed to be the ruler of this fiend, this interaction is like poetry. Furthermore, whether by intention or not, Azathoth's inadvertent power in the game as a rank-up target to stun your opponent is indicative of its counterpart's implied power in the Cthulhu mythos. Outside of this, the card art of Azathoth is a neat interpretation on what Azathoth could be, an absolute wretched horror that screams insatiable chaos. Again, kinda like my mom when Nyarla, though a lukewarm glass of water in terms of its impact on the hierarchy of the Yu-Gi-Oh universe, has a much more interesting basis in Lovecraft's world. See, whereas Azathoth is sometimes this blind idiot god because he's kinda just a big dumb idiot that likes eating and sleeping, Nyarlathotep meanwhile is much more cunning. His introduction in the excerpt, surprise surprise, Nyarlathotep, is frighteningly plausible in what it entails. To provide you a brief gist, we find that the Outer God has disguised himself as a human pharaoh on Earth and has amassed a large cult following throughout history. Members of his cult are known to lose their grasp on reality as they become more entrenched in his teachings as seen through the narrator's increasingly untrustworthy accounts. By the end of this short story, you, the reader, get the sense that Nyarlathotep has spiraled the world into self-destruction. Now, if only we could say Outer Entity Nyarla was that much a threat in Yu-Gi-Oh! The singular instance I can recall Nyarla being used in the TCG was to facilitate Lunalight effects by reattaching key pieces from the graveyard. Honestly, this reattaching effect to then copy a monster's attribute and type is fitting. Nyarlathotep, as implied earlier though not explicitly stated, is a shapeshifter, and shapeshifters can be hard to nail in terms of Yu-Gi-Oh card design. But I think having the rank 4 copy other monsters, namely main deck monsters which, if you recall during my little cooking session, are a potential proxy for the feeble mankind, works to pay tribute to Nyarlathotep. Nyarla also being able to change its rank further adds to this imagery. No, not those items. These items, though the other items are also cool. The first 2 cards, Dreamlands and Forbidden Apocrypha, very clearly represent Dreamland and the Necronomicon in Lovecraft's world. Regarding the first, the concept of confusing reality with dreams frequently occurs in Lovecraft stories. Any dreams lead to Dreamland, an outer-worldly place where many entities in the Cthulhu mythos reside. This location is incredibly vast and fleshed out, more so than I can go into for this video. At the very least, Yu-Gi-Oh's field spell version of Dreamland is likely an homage to the beautiful marbled city of Kadath in the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath. This makes more sense when you realize that Kadath is where most of the Great Ones and sometimes the Elder Ones reside. So, with Elder Entity Entis being based off of an Elder One, she is rightfully erected in the center of the card art. Regarding the second, Necronomicon is a grimoire full of forbidden knowledge. This item not only pops up frequently in Lovecraft stories, but you may have also seen some sort of reincarnation of it in pop culture. It's such an easy thing to replicate. So, it's great to see Forbidden Apocrypha as its mimic in Yu-Gi-Oh! The fact Apocrypha can wipe away one type of extra deck monster can be interpreted as a sort of spell the Necronomicon may hide within its pages. The final item we need to talk about today, and one that I love alongside the entity Nyarla, is Forbidden Trapezohedron. See, the Haunter of the Dark is one of my favorite Lovecraft stories, and the Shining Trapezohedron, the inspiration for the aforementioned spell card, is a focal point in the story. Let me set the scene. We find a horror writer, Robert Blake, becoming obsessed with a black church he sees across his town from his house. When he goes to investigate the place, he finds the trapezohedron, described as a red strided polyhedron, suspended in a metal cage within an adorned box with depictions of out-of-this-world entities on it. Like every other horror protagonist, and I swear we need to like nail common sense into their brains, Blake accidentally disturbs it. In the following weeks, Blake starts to go mad until a creature of shadows, presumably the Nyarlathotep, takes his life. At least that's one interpretation of it. See, the story is written like an investigator's case study, with all of these facts being presented, hinting towards what I just described. However, for all we know, everything could have merely been a coincidence, and Blake could have simply committed suicide. If that just captivated you, I would highly recommend you check out the story, linked in the description below. Back to a regularly scheduled program though, the Shining Trapezohedron and Forbidden Trapezohedron look exactly the same. So much so that they could be a one-to-one replica, bar the change in name. What's really cool beyond the spell card's art is the fact that it can let you summon any extra deck monster, likely an entity, to your field. The Shining Trapezohedron is what presumably summons Nyarlathotep to hunt down Blake in the Haunter of the Dark. Meanwhile, Forbidden Trapezohedron can summon the XYZ Nyarla to your board.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
Just hope you don't get killed in the process. Damn, that was a lot. If you've made it this far, I'm genuinely impressed. Also, of course, thankful since you chose to watch the video, you clicked on it, you saw the really pretty thumbnail, at least, I think it's pretty. Now, I want all of you to note that much of what I've said in this video is theory. As obvious as it may seem, say, Norden is Nodens or Azathoth is Azathoth, Konami has to come out and confirm a lot of this before you can go around saying for 100% fact that I'm right. But I just wanted to make these associations clear because, frankly, they're kinda sick. Lovecraft universe is equally as sick. Though I try to respect it as much as possible here, I have certainly missed many details, lore, and stories. If you're interested in pursuing any of his works more so than I could describe in this video, you can again start by checking out the description below for some links. And if you think I'm as sick as the entities and Lovecraft universe, please like the video and subscribe. Otherwise, all I can say is...